Hello and welcome to Two Queens, Two Crowns. I'm your host, KJ Miller, founder, lecturer, and content creator.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Rose White, actress, writer, and teacher of how to actually sell a TV show organically and in the forthcoming movie, Night Bitch.
Heyo, and we are very excited because tonight is a Queen Things episode, which means we do what we want. And also we address a lot of your comments and we talk about current events. One such current event being the fact that I am fighting for my life in my TikTok comment section right now.
I hope you play the video because I know the fighting for your life, but I don't know the video that this is based on.
Oh, okay. Yes, I will. I will play the video it's based on, and I will play the song that caused the video so that everybody's up to speed and everyone listening can decide if they too want to fight me in the comments. Let's get it all out there. So yeah, we'll be talking about that. And also, as always, our parking lot, anything else we want to throw in at the end. So it's going to be a pretty classic Queen Things episode. And I, for one, am looking forward to it.
I'm very excited. It's always fun being a queen with you. I love wearing my crown.
All right, it's time to dive into our comment section. And tonight we're actually going to be diving into our comment section from 2 weeks ago, because as you recall, last week was our bonus episode, and I didn't want to bring up the comments from the prior episode in the bonus episode because not everyone has access to the bonus episode. And I really want everyone to have access to our reaction to these comments, because I will just say 2 weeks ago was a Queen Things. I did it on my own. You were unavailable. And so I was downloading about our Brandy and Monica episode, among other things. I may have just been rambling for most of it, but I know for at least part of it, I was talking about Brandy and Monica. And the clip that I posted to TikTok got almost 250 comments, okay? Just this one little 30, 40-second clip. So the people were chatting. And even though at this moment in the conversation, I was talking about Brandy and Monica, however, what I brought up was Beyonce and Taylor, because I feel like now I'm giving you like a 10-part trying to get to
I love it. 20-part. Listen,
yes.
I want a mini-series.
The reason I brought up Beyonce and Taylor was because I had thrown it back to the comment you made about being a relatable Black woman. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Yes.
Yes. Or actually, I think what you said was palatable Black woman. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now I had thrown it back to that, and I had said how much that resonated, and that as it relates to Beyonce, I felt as though part of the reason her numbers, in terms of her like album charting, song charting, even tour sales, have started to dip in comparison to Taylor Swift's, is because she has stepped so fully into her Blackness and has really put her Blackness so much at the forefront. And I think that has made her less palatable and less relatable to a mass audience relative to Taylor Swift. And I think that's part of the reason her numbers have started to pale a bit in comparison to Taylor Swift. So that was the argument I made. And that was the clip that people were responding to. Now, before I get to the other people's comments, do you have any comments?
It's funny. I do remember what I said about being a palatable Black woman and noticing, when I was that, when I wasn't that, how I was received. It's funny because I don't as strongly remember this part of the conversation. Like, even you walk me through it, I'm like, oh, I believe it. This sounds like something we would talk about. But I'm just amazed that something that's only a couple weeks ago, I'm like, oh, did we talk about that? Oh, cool. Okay.
Okay. You're like, I have no memory of this. Okay, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't happen. Well, let me assure you, it did happen. Okay,
Never put me on the stand. I'll just be like, I don't remember. I don't know.
Well, I mean, and shout out to the flaws of our criminal justice system, because no one remembers anything is really what it comes down to. However, let's get back to this. So that's what I posted, right? My take that this is the palatable black woman theory is part of the reason Beyonce has started to pale in comparison to Taylor. Now, like I said,
no, Beyonce's numbers. Of course, Beyonce's
numbers. Yes, numbers. Oh, yes. Whew, please, numbers, because we all know she's a queen and she's extremely talented. Now, like I said, 250 comments on a relatively short video, so the people were talking, and I think there were really 3 themes that came across in the comments that I saw over and over and over. The first one related to Beyonce essentially being beyond the numbers. So this comment from a user named Dawn, I think is indicative of that theme. She wrote, Beyonce is not only incredibly talented, but also constantly pushing herself. She is on a mission to educate too. She is about more than album sales. Now, I will say, now I did respond and say I agree with this, because I do. I absolutely think Beyonce, and she's spoken about this in interviews, I absolutely think Beyonce has started to think beyond album sales, beyond Grammy Awards, beyond charting. I think she's focused on making music that speaks to her and pushing herself forward in terms of being innovative and in terms of educating while she entertains. I think all of that is true. I just also think she's still making better music than most people and deserves all of that recognition from an album sales perspective, from a numbers perspective, what have you. It's like, sure, she's above it, but she still deserves it, you know?
Mm-hmm. You know what that makes me think of? Oprah gave this interview about when she made the movie The Color Purple the first time. Like, she had loved the book. She'd always wanted to play the character that she ended up playing in the movie. And she was heartbroken when it didn't get the sales numbers that she had hoped for, because she's Oprah. It's The Color Purple. It was already a best-selling book at that point. And so she was so heartbroken.
Yeah.
And she had this conversation. Someone reminded her, I wish I could remember who she said she talked to, but I don't remember, said something like, you went into this wanting to make the movie that was on your heart, knowing that it might be less commercial, and you did it. And you did. So what if you think about it in that framework, that you created what you felt like you were on this planet to create, then regardless of how it's received, it's still touching the people that it needs to touch. There was more this person said. I wish I could remember exactly that. But it shifted how Oprah thought about what she chose too, like having a relationship, kind of what you described with Beyonce, that of being beyond the numbers. Like that might not just be the goal of the project. I agree with you that regardless of what her goal is, her work deserves the numbers. It's that high caliber. But it is interesting. It just reminded me how Oprah used to have that relationship between numbers and like the quality of the work, or whether it was worthy or worth the time, and that she had to go through this whole thing to sort of start thinking differently. So it sounds like Beyonce is already might be thinking more about even legacy than numbers.
Right. Like maybe she'll be sort of akin to one of these painters from medieval times who died penniless, but who we all recognize as just like, I mean, she's not going to die penniless, to be clear, but do you know what I mean? Like after the fact, we're all like, oh, genius, brilliance, masterpieces, so on and so forth, but they didn't get the recognition they deserved in their time.
Yeah, I would even think of like more recent would be Zora Neale Hurston, Their Eyes Were Watching God. Like that book, no one recognized it at its time, and now it's taught in schools everywhere. And there are albums like this too, right? I feel like there's always music that is sort of, not that Beyonce has been panned, but music that isn't fully appreciated at the time, that's sort of rediscovered or like seen through a different lens later. So I do think even if she's not, she can write, you've pointed out in previous episodes, she can write hyper palatable like it's nothing. Like that's not hard for her. It seems like that's not what, and she continues to do that. Like I loved this album. I just also think if that's no, it sounds like based on what you're saying, that's no longer her sole marker because she does that so well already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess just to like make it a bit more personal, I guess what I wonder is how do you get to a place where you're okay with maybe the numbers not being there, maybe the recognition not being there, even when you believe you're deserving of those things, or you believe I'm putting out my best work yet, right? Like, which I do believe. I think Cowboy Carter is Beyonce's best work yet. And I think a lot of people agree, but like, they're not bumping these singles. I mean, I don't think any one of the singles have been in the top 10 for the last couple of weeks. And, you know, I think, I mean, I've seen so many takes, people saying Billie Eilish's album is more deserving of album of the year, which I deeply disagree with. But, you know, it's fine. We all have differing opinions. But I just feel like the conversations I'm hearing aren't matching the level of excellence. And just how do you even get to a place where you're okay with that, you know?
I hope we get to a place in our careers where we get to explore that, where we're delivering at such a high. I think you already do deliver at high caliber, and I think I do too. But I think that's some next level stuff, because I do think like the basis of our worth is not in how well we are received by the people around us. I think that's one part. Like impact is big, and having that is really big. But at least me personally, I think sometimes we're here to do something that's not popular. And so we have to, if that's part of the path, we have to get to a place to accept that. So I'm talking universally now. I don't know if it still is applicable to Beyonce, but I do think that this was a really powerful work. And if it isn't received now, I don't think that lessens its merit or value.
Yeah. No, I don't think so either. I guess I just wonder, like, just speaking for myself, obviously I'm on a scale far, far lower than where Beyonce is, but speaking for myself, when I think about like the content that I make, sometimes it hits, sometimes it flops, and sometimes a video or a piece of content that I've spent so much time on and cared so much about, no one sees and no one cares about. And it is still disappointing, you know, like I can understand theoretically this idea that like, you know, the work speaks for itself and you make work that matters to you and, you know, so on and so forth. But like, it's still very disappointing when it isn't received the way you wanted it to be or thought it would be. And I'm saying this having not created one of the greatest albums of all time, which is what I believe Cowboy Carter is, and Renaissance and Lemonade. So, and none, you know, and she's yet to win album of the year. So I can't even imagine how Beyonce feels. So I'm just like, how does she get to a place where she's like, whether it's received the way I want it to be or not, I'm going to keep pushing myself and keep delivering because like I'm doing this honestly at this point for me and for the culture, which is what I feel, you know?
Mm-hmm. I wonder if she'll speak to that because for the how, so there's a question, how do I get there? Or
yeah. How do I get there?
I think, I would imagine that it would be something where, how do I put this? When the thing is its own reward, and not everything like where, okay, let's do it. there's this, I remember when I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, I was on an ashram for a while, guys. It's cool. We read the Bhagavad Gita, and one of the things that, I'm going to mess it up. It was something someone said to Arjuna, and I think Krishna said to Arjuna or something like that. Again, forgive me, I'm getting it wrong. But said something like, you are entitled to your labor, but not the fruits of your labor. And there are many ways to interpret that, I believe. But one of them is that the work, the creation itself is the gift, is the thing. And that anything else that comes after that is like bonus credit. You're not entitled to it. Like whatever it is, it just isn't the thing. Like it's the creation. That is the thing. That is its own... That is the value. Anything else is bonus. I'm not explaining it totally well, but I think that's I think we experience disappointment too. So I don't think those are mutually exclusive. Because I think like just it's human. It's human to want something and to be sad when it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But I do think it's possible to like align one's values such that it's less subject to those ups and downs, because you can never control what hits with people and what gets forgotten and all that stuff. That's so out of our control.
Yeah. I do like that phrasing, you're entitled to your labor, not the fruits of your labor. I think that's really powerful, and definitely I feel like that is going to stick with me. So thank you for sharing that, because it's something I kind of want to think a bit more about. And honestly, that's where I would like to end up, because I think if you want to have a career as a content creator of any sort, then you do have to get comfortable with the idea that a lot of the content you make isn't going to hit. There's no one out there who's only had hits. You know, there's no one out there who's only been successful with anything they've made. And so, yeah, it's just, I feel like something that for whatever reason, I've really been grappling with the last couple of weeks in my nascent content creator career. So yeah, when it came up in the comment section about Beyonce, it was like, yeah, I think you're right. I think she probably has moved beyond album sales and numbers being the end all be all for her. But like, what about the rest of us, you know? So yeah. Okay, let's move on to the second set of comments. So now the second set of comments had to do with kind of where Beyonce is in her personal life relative to Taylor. So this user, her name is Sarah, she said, I've always thought Beyonce being married is a factor too. Like each album of Taylor's is relationship tea. It's hard to match that intrigue. I think Lemonade gave tea and people went crazy for it. So now, and I saw a number of people leave comments kind of similar to this. Basically, like Taylor's albums, they're not just incredibly well written and incredibly melodic and all of those things. Also, there's the tea of it all, right? So you feel like you're kind of like uncovering a mystery and you're figuring out what's going on in her dating life and whatever. And obviously Beyonce's been married to the same man for 15, 16, umpteen years. So that's less there. That's less of a factor. I'm curious, what's your reaction to that?
I had never thought of that before, but I'm sure that's part of it. Oh, yeah. In this culture that loves, I say this culture that loves gossip. Most cultures love gossip. Right. I think that definitely would have an impact on people being like so invested. Yeah, that makes sense. If there's not something tumultuous happening in the marriage right now. Now, I will say there can be tea about anything. So if their marriage were more publicly tumultuous, I'm sure there'd be plenty of album fodder. But since it's at least publicly not, then yeah, that level, that layer of interest isn't there as much. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good point. And honestly, it is something I had thought about. But I hadn't thought about it really until I joined the Taylor Swift fandom and realized the extent to which Taylor's fans really go down the rabbit hole of dissecting the lyrics and the songs to try to figure out exactly who she's talking about in any given song. That, maybe because I am a Beyonce fan and she has been with the same man for 20 years, has not become a part of how I interact with music. And so, and we spoke about this with Tortured Poets Department, how I wasn't thinking any of the album was about that dumb man, Matty Healy. And then the entire internet was like, oh no, it is about him. And here's how we know. This lyric, blah, blah, blah. She spoke about this. This was her favorite song, his favorite song. She mentioned it. She talked about Florida. That's where they used to go. She talked about, just bop, 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 bop. And even before this album, I remember as I was, going through her back catalog, I would post something about a song that I really loved, and half the comments would be like, and that's why Jake Gyllenhaal, blah, blah, blah. Or actually, she wrote this. This one we're pretty sure was about Taylor Lautner. And I'm just like, I'm not thinking about any of this. Like, honestly, when I'm listening to her songs, I'm thinking about what they do for me emotionally, not necessarily who she was dating and talking about at the time, but it is so much a thing. And yeah, I think it makes people, I guess, more engaged.
Yeah, I believe that. That's so interesting to hear as a writer, because again, a different kind of writing. I do screenwriting. But when I write, I do draw from my life, but then I change it on purpose. So I'm curious, because I assume Taylor is known to write from her life, but I'm sure she changes stuff too. It's not like, I don't know. That's interesting to me to interpret everything. Well, I guess it might be like, oh, I'm leaving you breadcrumbs or something. But that's, I guess I'm always sort of, as a writer, I get amused when people are like, oh, does this mean that? And I'm like, I actually made that up because I wanted to tell a good story. And that's what I did with this project.
And honestly, again, as a newer Swiftie, and I have been told as a newer Swiftie, there are just things I don't know. And I'm sure that's true. But I have assumed on many occasions that, like, she has used her life as a starting point and then expanded from there, right? And so it's not just like a full-on one-for-one, but I think a lot of people very much believe it is a one-for-one, and that's important to them. And it does keep them even more engaged because they're constantly looking for clues and for Easter eggs and for references to maybe things that have been said before. And which I think is perfectly fine. I'm not shading anyone for doing that. That's just, one, is not necessarily how I interact with the art, but also because it's not how I've sort of been trained to interact with art. When it comes to Beyonce's music, like, I'm okay with the fact that we're not getting quote unquote tea with every album, because that's just like not part of what I'm doing. But I do understand that that might also be what's leading to Taylor being able to kind of like drive up these numbers.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And by the way, a super valid way to drive up numbers. I'd love to hear her, I don't know, unfiltered thoughts on that, which I doubt we'll ever get, but I would love to know, like, to what extent she drops Easter eggs intentionally, to what extent it's not intentional and people figure stuff out, and to what extent she's like, I just made that up. It was fun.
Yeah. Well, and I've read a few of her interviews and things that she's said about this. And it's funny because I feel like she's given a little bit of mixed messaging. On the one hand, I feel like she has on record said, like, I've written in a biographical way, like, I write my life, like, these stories are what I've lived. On the other hand, she has also said, I forget exactly when she said something to this effect, but basically she said something like, people are always trying to dissect my lyrics to figure out exactly which person I'm talking about, and they're typically wrong. And also, like, I'm often not writing about a single person in a single song, so I feel like her music is biographical in a lot of ways, but is not just a straight up diary, right?
Yeah,
like it's not just a chronological diary of her life.
Like, I would take that as biographical in the sense of like the emotion she's experienced and what's inspired her, not like you said, not like item by item, like this is this and that is that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes. I'm not surprised when she said, and most people get it wrong. Like people.
Yeah. Okay. So then the next set of comments and kind of final set of comments in terms of a theme was around kind of what we were just talking about, how Taylor interacts with her fans. So this user, their name is Yeri, which makes
Hi,
me laugh.
Yeri.
They say, I also think that Taylor interacts with her fans. She has these clues and games with her fans that keep them hooked. Now, and this, I mean, as we have spoken about on this very show, is definitely true. The Easter eggs around when an album is dropping or a surprise song she's going to sing or, a new vault track that's going to be released, like the people putting together the clues on TikTok. Oh, she wore an orange dress and that means that the next album is going to be this. She held up the number 2, so we're going to get it at 2 a.m. and it's this. She, sang this song from her second album. So on the second night of the tour, it's going to, I mean, they're piecing it together, as we've spoken about, and she's playing into it, and she has spoken about this, the fact that she loves it. She loves the Easter eggs, she loves the clues, and now her fans love it too. And if I can tell you anything, I can tell you Beyonce is not doing all that, okay? Beyonce is simply not doing all of that. And I can believe that that is another reason why maybe her numbers don't, match Taylor's, because she's not playing that game in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have such different marketing strategies at this point. Like how they get, how they connect with their audiences is so different. And that hers is a lot more sort of back and forth engagement. Mm-hmm. And so I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think that makes sense. That gets people, that seems like a good engagement strategy, to have like Easter eggs and to have trained her audience to look for them and to want them, and to that makes them engage more. I can totally see that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can too. And it's like, as someone who doesn't engage in it, I appreciate the fact that for the fans who want to engage that way, it's available for them. I can very much appreciate the excitement around it. But I also will just say I can very much appreciate that is just not Beyonce's style, right? Like, yeah. Now there's a part of me that, feels like, because Beyonce is grown. Like, that's my initial reaction, is because Beyonce is grown. But the fact is, Taylor is grown too, right? Like, she's very much a grown woman. And so, and I don't say that in a way to, I'm not trying to slight Taylor. I'm just trying to say that the way I feel about Beyonce is she is grown. She feels very grown to me. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And well,
but they're also in different generations and have slightly different audiences, which have different expectations. Like, Beyonce's older than we are. Taylor's younger than we are. I think we happen to be in this sort of middle place where we're like close enough to both to really be able to appreciate it. But I totally get why they would have different strategies of reaching their, again, not to say there is an overlap of their audiences, but they have different audiences and different expectations. So yeah. I don't think it's shade on either to either be doing it or not doing it. It's just different.
Right. Yeah, completely agree. I appreciate the people in the comments who brought up those differences, because while I do think the idea of being a palatable Black woman and the idea of Beyonce kind of stepping away, in my opinion, from the desire to always present as hyper palatable and hyper accessible, while I absolutely think that that plays a role,
Yes.
I appreciate people, you know, pointing out, yes, and here are some other things, right? Like also, Taylor's albums are tea. And also, Taylor drops a million Easter eggs, you know, every year about this, that, and the third, and makes the fandom feel as though this is an interactive fan experience. And those things are true. And I think to Taylor's credit, she has figured out how to feed her fan base in a way that keeps people like hyper engaged. And I think that that's, you know, it's good to recognize.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to Miss Swift. She's a marketing genius. Listen.
She is that. Absolutely.
An engagement genius. Oh my God. I was like, I would love to hire her to be in charge of my engagement. She might be busy though. I think she's got some stuff going on.
She might be busy.
I'll reach out. Just give her the opportunity. I feel like she'd knock it out of the park.
Well, those are the comments. And with that, I think it's time to turn our attention to current events. And the current event I want to discuss, as I mentioned at the top, is how my comment section is in shambles.
I need to see some of these comments. I've been in a little writing cave for the last 2 weeks and will be for the next 4. So yeah. I know nothing. Yeah. Talk to me as if to a small child who's been in a cave.
Well, the first question to ask you is, have you heard Eminem's new single, Houdini?
No. Wait, how new is it?
It's fairly new. I think it came out like last week.
Oh, I definitely, because I was like, I feel like I can imagine him saying the word Houdini, but I don't. I don't know if that's attached to a song.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I'm not going to give you any context. I'm just going to say, let's listen to it. Why don't you pull it up on YouTube? There's a music video. Actually, I haven't seen the music video yet. I've just heard the song. So why don't you pull it up and we'll listen together.
Okay.
Now the question is, do you want to give your real-time reaction to the song, or do you want to see the video I made about the song first?
I think I should give my real-time reaction first before any opinions. And that is mostly that I actually liked the end of the video. I thought that was sort of fun. I thought I don't know, it seemed like his rapping got better at the end when he was merged into his old and new self. I think I'm probably not the target audience. So I would sort of be curious to see what someone who, and I was thinking like, who is the target audience for this? Because it's not, I don't think 13-year-old boys anymore. Like maybe, but I don't think so. Mm-hmm. I'd have to talk to some. I haven't talked to any lately. My theory is it's the people who were 13-year-old boys when he came out the first time. That's his audience that he's trying to tap into right now. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know how they'd feel about it. Like I'm curious because I feel like this might speak to his old core audience. Mm-hmm. To me, it was like a one-off listen to. It was both not as edgy as it used to be and like, I don't know, but I don't always like edgy things. So I'm like, it's edgier than I like, but not as edgy as it used to be that has like that cut. So I'm glad he's making something that's authentic to him. And I hope it resonates with the people he made it for. That's where I kind of land on it.
I love that. I love that reaction. Okay. All right. So then I'm just going to now play for you my video. Okay. So I listened to that new Eminem song, Houdini, and everyone is so upset about the Megan Thee Stallion line because it's so offensive. And yes, it is offensive, but I feel like that line has finally enabled me to put into words what I've been thinking about Eminem for so long. Like I've been asking myself for so long, why is it that he's such a talented rapper, but he's fallen all the way off? What's missing here? I feel like Eminem is so good at wordplay and he's so focused on wordplay. Like he is surgical about it. He's meticulous about it. And the thing is, wordplay obviously is important for rapping, but it's almost as if he's missed the forest for the trees. Because yes, rap is about wordplay, but it's also about storytelling and charisma and swagger and being entertaining. Like rap is more than just like, can I put these words or twist these words in this specific way? And I feel like Eminem is so focused on that. And that to me is how we got this line about Megan Thee Stallion. I really feel like he was like, okay, shot at her feet, shot at her feet, shot at her feet. Oh, feet like foot or feet like feature, Feat. Oh, bars, shot at her feet. Megan Thee Stallion, that's not a real reenactment, but I feel like it went something like that. Like he was like, oh, and feet, like feet, Feet or Feat, and just ran with it because wordplay is so important to him and he's so focused on it. And he was like, oh, wait till they hear this one. That like, okay, but is the song good? Right? At the end of the day, it comes back to, is the song good? And the song is not good. It's not a bop. We're not going to dance to it this summer. We're simply not. And part of that is because it's just a song he already made. We've heard this song before in like 2006. So it's almost like reading a book by an author who paints a really beautiful picture with the words that she uses, but the book is boring. That's what it's giving.
People are really, first of all, what was the Megan Thee Stallion line that was offensive? I heard him say Megan Thee Stallion, and I heard what I thought was feature, but it was very fast. I feel like I should look this up.
Yeah. Let's just so we're all aligned on what the lyric is. He says, if I was to ask for Megan Thee Stallion if she would collab with me, would I really have a shot at a feat? As in feature. But obviously Megan Thee Stallion was shot in her feet by Tory Lanez. So this was his sort of double entendre, shot at a feat, right? And people are offended because, I mean, Tory Lanez is in jail for shooting Megan Thee Stallion. She has spoken very publicly about not only how traumatizing it was, but how and it came on like right around the time that of her mom passing away, and how she was suicidal, deeply depressed, and then had to go through this very public trial and watch, tons of people, including Tory Lanez, lie about her and say, gaslight her and everything else. This was an extremely traumatic event for Megan Thee Stallion. Okay. Which is why when people heard this line that he kind of throws in passing, people were like, yeah, this is distasteful. Like, why? Like, just for the sake of getting this bar off, a shot at a feat, because it's so clever, that's worth exploiting this Black woman's trauma. That's literally what the conversation was. Now, I took that as a starting point in order to make the point I made, which was, yeah, I think he was willing to do it because I think he's so focused on wordplay. I think that is his whole thing. And to me, it's just not interesting anymore, or at least is the point I was trying to make. But what's your reaction to the video now that you have the context for the Megan Thee Stallion line?
So yeah, I'm surprised that video got so much hate, because it seems like a take. I don't know. It seems well thought and well reasoned. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'm very curious what people got super upset about. My one thought was saying like, it's about entertaining, it's about storytelling. I could imagine a big fan being like, he tells stories.
Yes. Yes, that is what the fans are saying, that he is a storyteller. He is entertaining. And that I just don't get it. I must not know anything about Eminem or about his music. Happily, a lot of people concluded that I was too young to know, which I was just like, oh, well, thank you. As it turns out, I'm actually squarely in the age range of, at 37. Like when he came out, I think his first, what was it called? Slim Shady LP. I think came out in 98. And
Fun
then
fact, he actually had an album, at least one album before that. I think it was called Infinity, that sold
He
no
did.
records, and that's what made him so mad.
yeah, he did. But yeah, his like the album that we all sort of like came to know him by, I think came out in 98, at which point I would have been 12. And then I think I was 14 or so when the next album came out. And I think his second album was like the super, super critically acclaimed one, Marshall Mathers LP. Anyway, I was certainly enough of a fan. I listened to multiple songs off of both of those albums. And, you know, in the way that I feel like we kind of all did. And I watched 8 Mile and I loved Lose Yourself and blah, 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 blah. Like I was pretty firmly in his like peripheral fan base. I wasn't in his extreme fan base, but I was in his peripheral fan base. And so the fact that people are like, oh, you don't get it, you're too young, like, you know, first of all, just thanks. But in fact, I do. And so, yeah, I was a little surprised by how angry people are. Let's just read some of the top liked comments just to give you a flavor. Yes. Okay. Well, the most liked comment is, if you don't get Eminem, you don't get him. Us old heads get him. It's great. So again, just assuming I'm not old enough to understand.
I love that you're not an old head. Sure. That's
Sure.
fine.
Okay, another comment that got a lot of likes was, you're telling me Eminem isn't a storyteller in his music? LOL, what? So yes, people very much believe he is a storyteller. Another comment that got a lot of likes, you're one of my favorite girls, but agree to disagree on this one. He brought back B Rabbit, Slim Shady, M, and Marshall. Okay, so those are some of his personas.
So we had different, yeah. I guess like Beyonce had Sasha Fierce and everything. You know what? I mean, maybe you're only picking the nicest comments, but all of these comments have been basically like agree to disagree. Like she literally said, you're my favorite, agree to disagree. The other one said, you're not an old head, which you have a more youthful approach. You're not an old head. And what was the other one?
You're telling me Eminem isn't a storyteller in his music? LOL, what?
Okay, that's the only one where I'd be like, okay, he told a story. You just didn't find it a particularly compelling story. Well,
yes, you're right. I think that actually a lot of the comments disagreeing have been respectful. The thing is, so now I'm at 1,135 comments. Okay, and this is
1,100? 1,100?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, sorry, continue.
And this is the thing about TikTok, is the long tail of comments. So if we were to look at the top, even call it the top 100 comments, and by top I mean most liked, I would say most of those are disagreeing with me, but are disagreeing with me fairly respectfully. Okay, but the top 10%, that's 100 comments. Okay, that leaves 900 comments.
Oh, tell me you're not reading the other 900 comments.
Well, and this is the problem, and this is why I find myself sometimes in a bit of a funk and feeling triggered, because it's hard not to read the other 900. Because when I go to my comments, I'm just reading the comments as they come in. And so a lot of them are not this. I'm reading the most liked comments, but you know, I could pull out some of the others.
You mean Eminem fans are not polite in their assessment of anyone taking an aim at their idol? What?
Well, and this is the thing. I think some of what you said in the beginning is very much true. First of all, I do think this is targeted at the people who were his fans in the 99s and the 2000s. 100,000. It must be. It's a remake of a song that he released in like 2002, right? So, and remake, honestly, it's a reboot. It's the same song as far as I can tell, right? With just different lyrics. So you must be going after that audience, and that audience, as far as I can tell from my comments, loves it. So it landed exactly how he wanted it to land. Kudos to him. So that's number one. And number two, I actually agree with a lot of the people saying like he is, or at least has been, a storyteller in his music. I do feel like we got more of that in earlier Eminem. But what I have felt, and I'm not an Eminem stan, but what I have felt in a lot of what I've heard over the more recent years is that he's become so focused on the wordplay of it all that it's kind of to the exclusion of all the other things that make a song good. To me, a song isn't good just because you figured out 12 different double entendres to fit together or you rapped 100 miles an hour. To me, right? And I feel like we wouldn't have gotten that Megan Thee Stallion line if he wasn't so focused on getting that bar off. But he was. So, but I do understand, and I said this to you earlier, I do understand that like if you love Eminem the way I love Beyonce, and then you saw my video, I can understand how that would trigger you, because if someone made a video saying Beyonce wasn't a storyteller and saying Beyonce wasn't, being entertaining or charismatic or all of those things, I would be triggered by that. So I do understand that. And so, I think I'm trying to figure out what's my takeaway from all this. You know what I mean? Because I meant everything I said and I stand by what I said, but I also understand people being upset by it and triggered by it. And I don't really want to be in a place where I'm feeling triggered by people being triggered by me. So what's the takeaway?
Wow. Well, I think you're basically there, which is really exciting. To me, it sounds like you're like, I said what I said and I meant it. Don't feel great about how people are reacting to it. It sounds like, if we bring it back to the other earlier part of our conversation, it sounds like getting to have a relationship, like putting something out there and creating it, and not, and knowing that people may love it, people may be triggered by it, but it's you telling the truth. And you, if the joy comes from telling the truth, at least as much as it comes from people resonate. Of course, it's joyful when people resonate. We love it. We love to feel affirmed and seen. And those moments when we don't feel seen or we feel shut down for what we for telling our truth. Yeah, that's human to be feeling this way. And on top of that, as you're stepping into being a creator and doing it in this public forum, I think you're right at the cusp of getting to the place where you can create and not be as attached, because that's when the really great shit happens. I think you're just right there. And this is one of those uncomfortable, if you can be at peace with people strongly disagreeing with you and leaving comments, then nothing's ever in your way, because what's there to be afraid of? That's the thing that keeps people silent, is being afraid that people won't like what they say. Yeah. If you can let go of that, you can do anything.
Yeah. Well, I will say it actually is so helpful, the fact that you pointed out after I read those comments that they weren't that bad, because I was kind of myopic about just reading every comment, and I was in the long tail of comments because they do get really rude, and some of them got quite racist. I tried to delete those. But if I look at the comments with the most likes, it's mostly fairly respectful disagreement, which I have no problem with. In fact, I think that's great, because it makes me sort of rethink or re-question or maybe go, you know what I mean? I'm all for.
Yeah, do a deeper dive. You're thinking about it. Yeah,
all for respectful back and forth. And so I appreciate you kind of pointing that out, because I think I was in a little bit of a darker space, just looking at all the long tail of angry comments. And I do agree with what you're saying about I think the work is getting to a place where I can be okay. And I think I'm not quite there yet.
Sure.
But I think I'm getting
you're
closer.
Getting there.
Yeah.
It's like how when something is so sensitive, the first times you touch it, it really hurts. And then you get a little thicker skin, and then you touch again, doesn't hurt as much. And then before you know it, you're like, it's nothing. Hey, hit me again.
Right.
Wait, also, it helped that you remember when we did that very controversial episode about Meghan Markle and Kate Middleton.
Yes.
Shout out to us from a month and a half ago.
Yes.
I saw some comments and I felt really bad, and I went away. I was like, damn, should I do more research before I do these episodes? I am about people doing research before things. I always come in here being like, I don't know. But when I looked back at the clip that people were mad about, I was like, wait, I believed everything that I said. I told the truth. And when I look back at the comments, I had a similar experience of being, oh, they're not like, you're so shitty for saying that. They're like, pointing out something else, or have you considered this? I'm like, oh, that's actually, it felt bad in the moment, but I was like, that's actually fair and not that bad. And being in a place of just hearing it and being like, oh, I didn't consider that. Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's like, it is sometimes the clenching, the clenching to keep from it being painful just makes it more painful and feel like more things are hitting you, is my experience.
Totally. Oh, that's such a good point and so true. And I'm grateful for you for pointing that out, because I do think I've been in a little bit of a clinch and a little bit of just like a defensive mode, and I that's what I don't want to be in, right? Like that's what I said when we were talking in the beginning of the episode about like, how is she just okay with just like when stuff doesn't hit? And for me, part of that is like, how is she okay when people just straight up are like, I don't like this, you're doing a bad job, because then I get in this defensive place, and it's hard to create from a defensive place, like it's hard to be like, let me do another thing. Let me make another video. Let me try to be funny. Let me try to be introspective. Let me try to be vulnerable. Let me try to be interesting, when what you're thinking about is like, oh, all the people who are going to hate it. So I don't want to lead from that space, and I'm working on that.
Girl, you and everyone in entertainment, we are in this together. Yes. And I'll just say one thing that I had found inspiring, Oprah, I always bring it back to Oprah. She talked about how when she made her show for the first few seasons, she was just like, why don't, if there was ever a negative comment, she wanted to like track the person down and be like, why don't you like me? Like, what do I need to do for you to like? Oprah said this. Yeah. And then I don't think Oprah's in that place anymore, but it sounds like that is a very, like, as you make more and if more people see it, then more people respond, and then more people, there'll just be a wider range in people's reactions. And, it seems like that is a big part of the craft, is like building the nervous system to be able to hold that. So this, I don't know about you, I'm trying to build that big nervous system to hold the big things. So
totally.
one more chance to work on that.
All right, Adrienne, it's time for our parking lot. And I just have one thought I want to share. I was at my business school reunion this weekend and just had such a phenomenal time. But what I wanted to share was a takeaway, one of my takeaways from the weekend, because at Harvard Business School, I'm an alum of HBS. A question they ask you when you first get there is, what is it you will do with your one wild and precious life? And that's a question taken from a poem by Mary Oliver. And I remember spending so much time finding that question to be so daunting, because it was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my one wild and precious life? And I don't want to waste it. And like, I've got to do the right thing. And I've got to do a cool thing. And I've got to do an important thing. And this weekend it came up in a panel, and one of my friends on the panel said, I think what's so daunting about that question is the word one. This idea that you've just got the one life. And that just really unlocked for me that I feel like we get more than one life. It's like, yes, technically it's one in the sense that you're born once and you die once. But in terms of lived experience, I feel like I've lived multiple lives. And I feel like I have multiple lives ahead of me. And I think that framing has helped that question to feel less daunting, because then it sort of gets to be, the answer gets to be, well, I'm going to treat every iteration of this life like a gift. I'm going to look for joy and look for meaning and look for fellowship and companionship. That's what I've done up until now. That's what I'll continue to do. But thinking about it as a series of lives almost that I get to live, it's been impactful for me. So I wanted to share that.
Wow. I love that. I love that because I heard once, I don't know if it's true, that like on a molecular level, we become or a cellular level, I don't know, some micro level, we become a new person every 7 years, right? Like that every piece of who you were before is gone and it's all new stuff. And this just feels like the emotional version of that. Like we live multiple lives. We like wholly change. And like, how do you live these many wild and precious lives? How do you live them to their fullest? I love that. That's really powerful, KJ. That really resonates with me.
Oh, good. Well, I hope it resonates with our listeners as well.
I'm trying to think. Now I want to put something in the parking lot. Because I feel like it's been a big couple of weeks. I don't know. I'll just say I'm working on a film script, and I'm really excited. I've written mostly TV, so this is the first film script I've written by myself. I've always written with a partner before, so I feel really excited about it. And just learning, I'll just throw in the parking lot, like learning my writing process again alone, and not with someone to bounce things off of all the time.
Yeah.
It's really empowering. It was something I struggled with for a couple of years after I parted ways with my partner. I didn't know. I was so used to hearing my voice off of someone else and echoing her voice back to her, It's been the first time. And I have a writing coach. I'm in a workshop with it, so I'm not by myself, but in terms of making the decisions, they are all of my decisions. And taking responsibility for that has been really exciting. We'll just throw that in the parking lot. So stepping up into new roles. We love it.
I love that. I'm excited for what you're creating and for the journey. I feel like the journey is just as important as the outcome. And the journey of flexing the muscle of kind of doing something solo that you're not used to doing solo, I think is really important and really empowering, and maybe in some ways really scary, and maybe in sometimes kind of defeating, but like you're still going through it, and getting that experience, I think, is really powerful.
That's it for this week, everyone. Be sure to follow us on TikTok at 2 Queens, 2 Crowns, and to check out the podcast on YouTube, 2 Queens, 2 Crowns, with the number 2.
Adrienne and I would also love for you to follow us on our personal socials. I'm on TikTok at @IM_KJ Miller and YouTube with the handle IamKJ Miller. And Adrienne's on IG, Adrienne Rose White, and TikTok at @wrong_or_right. See you next week.